Welcome to Sisters-in-Laws TV. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. And October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, a month dedicated to honoring and remembering our babies who have gone to heaven far too soon. I'm excited to present to you a series on surviving pregnancy loss. I know many of the stories you may hear may be triggering, so press pause, take a break, and come back to hear these powerful stories from sisters-in-laws who have survived pregnancy loss. All right. Well, welcome, Stephanie, to the Sisters-in-Laws TV page and this new series, Surviving Pregnancy Loss. So thank you so much for being a part of this series.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you. So I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. So I am an engineer by degree. Graduated, I guess it's been about 11 years ago. Went straight into corporate America. I worked for the company I interned with, so I've always been with the same company, which I know is a little unheard of for our generation. I've done various roles, but now I'm in a role where I manage about a $30 million corporate budget for capital equipment, as well as manage service and repair for a healthcare company. So we're a small medical devices company that I work for. I am married. I have one son. He is 2.5 years old. He's full of life. We love hanging out with him and watching his personality grow. My husband is an entrepreneur. So the joke is that I'm the sugar mama. I hold down the steady 9-to-5 with insurance and 401k, and he goes out and he finds businesses that he wants to buy with the goal of the businesses having a kingdom impact. So that's kind of our little life in a nutshell.
Awesome. What kind of engineer are you?
Biomedical.
Biomedical. Oh, so fun fact. I don't know if I've ever told this. So, I'm an engineer too.
Yes, I do.
So I actually started out as a biomedical engineer and ended up switching to chemical. Yeah. Like after that first year, maybe second year, I was just like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Let me go into something a little bit more broad. I don't know if I like biology that much.
Interesting enough, I've mostly done chemical engineering work. For the longest, people didn't really know where to put BME, so they'd be like, we're not real for sure what to do with this. So I actually started out at a manufacturing site that on a lot of material science, polymer type of work on that machine. So I have really done chemical engineering probably most of my career, but I do work for a healthcare company.
Yeah, so that is so funny. But and now the new company I work for is a pharmaceutical company, which is kind of full circle with what I do, being a doula, and then, all the care and things we do for my son. It's just like, I'm just like all full circle. Coming back around.
God knows.
He does. So I would love for you to take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your lost story.
Okay. So my husband and I met in 2012. We were married in 2013. We kind of came into it not really knowing when we'd have children, but I always knew that we wanted to have children. It was more like whoever says they want a dog, the other one was supposed to say, let's just have a baby. That was our thing. It was no pets in the house, but we could have as many children as we wanted. So after we'd been married a little over a year, I think I forgot to take my birth control. And at that point, I was like, oh, well, I guess we're off birth control. And that was in October. So by Thanksgiving, I'd had one cycle and my next cycle never did come. My friend was like, you're probably pregnant. I was like, no, I don't think that's true. And she's like, you need to go take a test. So go take a test. I was pregnant. So one cycle pregnant, went to the doctor before Christmas, came back, yep, you're pregnant, 8 weeks, come back in at your 12-week appointment. So we traveled that year for Christmas, and I was pretty sick over that time, but not, nothing really out of the norm. So went in for our 12-week appointment. The doctor went to do ultrasound on top of my belly, and the tech was like, we're not finding the baby. How about you go take your pants off? And in this moment, I kind of started to panic. I knew something was wrong, but my husband was clueless. He was just kind of like, oh, they just can't find the baby, no big deal. So ended up getting a vaginal ultrasound, and they found that my baby stopped growing around 9 weeks. So shortly after I'd gone in to confirm my pregnancy and had an ultrasound and everything, the baby stopped growing and really didn't know why. I remember in that moment, everything just kind of stopped. Because at that moment, the doctor's like, oh, I have an appointment to do a D&C tomorrow, because at this point, it had been 3 weeks and my body showed no signs of miscarriage. So he's like, you can go home and wait it out. And it could be tomorrow, but it could be 2 more weeks from now before you'll pass the baby. And we're like, okay. So we opted for the D&C. And in the midst of all this, I had shared with coworkers that I was pregnant. My family knew I was pregnant. So now it was our good news, and having to relive that we are losing our baby and went through D&C. My uncle in North Carolina at the time, my aunt and uncle lived in Raleigh. So my aunt took the train down. My mom caught a flight that next morning to be with us. I remember that day because my appointment wasn't until 2:00, but everything was, going through the motions. And when you get to the hospital, because they don't want to do the wrong surgery, the whole time they're like, well, do you know why you're here? Do you know why you're here? And I'm like, oh my goodness, if you ask me one more time, do I know why I'm here? So eventually about the 5th time, I just broke down. I was like, yes, I know why I'm here. Please do not ask me that anymore. So we had the D&C. I probably took 3 or 4 days off of work, but I was so ready to get back to normal. Going through life, having always been able to achieve goals and accomplish things, miscarrying was a very big hit to my ego. And I just wanted to get back on the horse and kind of pretend like nothing ever happened. And we got pregnant within 6 weeks the first time, so we can get pregnant again. So turned around, get back on the horse. We miscarried in January. By May, I had a positive pregnancy test again. So just normal, regular trying. I mean, we talked to the OB about why. They were like, yeah, it just happens. And if it happens once, we don't really go back and do any testing or anything like that. We just say, try again and we'll see what happens. So, get back on the horse. We're pregnant again in May. And by this time, I've transitioned my care to a midwife because my OB just didn't provide the level and the type of care that I really wanted. So when we go in for our confirmation ultrasound, the baby had not grown past 6 weeks. And at this point is when everything really fell apart, because I don't think I really allowed myself to truly heal after the first miscarriage. I was so focused on getting to the next step. And I just want to get pregnant. Let's get back on the horse. It's fine. And it really, really hit me like a ton of bricks. And I had to take some time off work and take some time to regroup and get my mental state back together and truly wrap my mind around what happened. So with this particular experience, I was with a midwife, and she told me, she's like, I don't want to give you another D&C because the more we force your cervix open, the more difficult it could be for you to carry a baby later on. So, and I could battle with incompetent cervix later is what her concerns were. So she wanted me to try to pass at home. So I did, and essentially came home and labored all night long to pass the baby and I guess get my body reset. And then following that, there was weekly pregnancy tests to see if my levels were coming back down, because if they weren't coming back down, then we were going to have to go in for a D&C anyway. So my second experience with the midwife was better, as good as it could be in the situation that was at hand, because they really kind of walked me through understanding what the implications would be post whatever we decide. So if I decide to go D&C, if I decide to pass at home, how all this could work. So was very appreciative of that. So that was summer 15. And from that point, we were not able to conceive. We tried Clomid, we tried timing, we tried everything under the sun, natural stuff, help. Nothing would work. So finally, I just said, okay, I'm done with this because it was making me crazy. It was making my husband crazy. Everybody was just crazy and not really productive. And nobody could figure out what was wrong. They ran some tests and they're like, oh, everything looks fine, but we're not for sure. And I know people used to say, oh, well, you can adopt or you can go see a fertility doctor. But I had trouble admitting that I had fertility issues. I don't know if I was embarrassed or what, but that was something that until much later would I finally admit, okay, there is something not right here because I am not conceiving. Well, I say that, but I think we're also led to believe that conception is just easy, that it just happens. And it does not just happen. There are a lot of things that have to line up. It is a true God thing that happens, yes, but there are a lot of things that change with the older that we get. So I kind of just decided, okay, we're done with this. So we started to travel. We went on vacations to India and to Peru. We just were living our best life. And I had an opportunity to interview for a job in Atlanta. And I said, okay, well, let's try it. Let's see. So I got the job and we moved here in November 16. And I actually went to the midwife and I did not like the new midwifery. So instead, when I went to my primary care doctor, I said, hey, I think I want to go see a fertility doctor. Can you recommend someone? And he did. And it was a Black fertility doctor here in Atlanta. And she was phenomenal. I had been primed by several friends that fertility doctors sometimes don't always have the best bedside manner, or they're not as caring as we would like for them to be in those very tender moments of our journey, right? But she was everything. 100%. When we came in, she ran blood work and she looked and she said, I don't see a reason why we can't get you pregnant. She did identify that I had PCOS. I had never been told that. I always had regular cycles. I don't grow the excessive hair like women with PCOS typically do. I don't carry a lot of extra weight. So a very atypical PCOS case. But when she did the ultrasound immediately, she was like, yes, you definitely do. So they tested me for diabetes and went through, looked at my egg reserve. And she was like, I think we can do this with IUI. We said, all right, let's see. So I was seeing a chiropractor. I also was getting fertility massages. So there's a local place here where she would give me fertility massages and she timed everything out depending on when my IUI cycle was going to be. We went in for our first IUI at the beginning of that May, and by Memorial Day, I had a positive pregnancy test. And it was interesting. I think because of the time in between our last loss and the time that it took us to get pregnant, I really pressed into God. And I had a lot of people praying over me. I had a lot of peace in those moments. I don't remember ever feeling very anxious about what could happen. Now, we definitely celebrated after we got out of the first trimester, but I remember being at peace. I had a wonderful pregnancy. And I grew a beautiful round belly, and labor was pretty low key and 2 pushes and he was out, and God truly, he showed up. And that's one thing that I tell people, I'm like, I think because I suffered so much in the wait and in the losses that God really just made this such an easy process once it came down to becoming a mom, or I guess having a living child at that point. Because of course I was a mom before then, even though I never got to bring my babies home from the hospital. So.
Oh man, I love your story. And you literally got restored in your weight. And I love that you shared about, because obviously we know that the waiting period was a lot, right? Like you went through ups and downs.
Yes.
There were relationship issues between you and your husband because y'all are probably time and intercourse, and especially with taking Clomid and having these extra hormones in your body. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how was that waiting period, especially as you start to see all your friends have kids around you, they're inviting you to their baby showers, their first birthday parties. How did you really lean into your faith during that waiting period?
I can actually remember a very particular incident where a friend, she was trying to get pregnant with her second, was not for sure she could, and ended up getting pregnant. And when she told me, everybody immediately looked at me with puppy dog eyes. And then I just walked away because I was like, you guys just made it bad, because I want to be happy in this moment. But when you turn around and you divert the attention to me, and now I feel it because it's like a pity party that I really did not want to have. I did not have a ton of friends get pregnant in my wait, but it was, in the age of Facebook, you're seeing even people who aren't really close to you, but it's just like, God, what is going on? Why can't I get pregnant? I actually had a friend who experienced a loss at the same time that I with my one, which was disastrous because I thought I could be there for her, but I could not. That is something I just was not in a place yet because our losses were maybe a month apart. So today definitely can love on a woman in her loss, but a month after I'd experienced the loss, I was not in a headspace, and she loved me anyway. Even when I was not a good friend to her, we worked through that and we talked through because she understood. It was a rock and a hard spot type of space. So I was sensitive at points, but then it got to be a point that, all right, God, in your time, our hearts also were open to adoption. In the beginning, if you had talked to me about adoption, I was like, no, God's giving me a baby. I don't know what you're talking about. But God grabbed a hold of my heart in the midst of trying to conceive with a fertility doctor, that we actually started the adoption process. And the week that we found out we were pregnant, our deposit was due on our adoption. And we said, God, we believe this is what you're calling us to do. So we're going to put the deposit down, because regardless of what does or does not happen with our biological child, we feel that you're calling us to do this. So, yeah. So we're actually now on the other side of that. We're in the process of adopting baby number 2. We are almost done with our home study for baby number 2. So
how crazy is that?
Yes.
I love that you all were intentional about stepping out on faith, because obviously you had heard, people had told you back in the beginning when you had your 2 losses that you could adopt. And you were like, girl, I ain't even thinking about that right now. Look, I'm going to have a baby. But for you to step out on faith, even when you had the positive pregnancy test and you didn't even know how that pregnancy was going to go, right? For you all to put the money down. Yep. And adoption is not cheap, y'all. Adoption is not cheap. So, especially
at all. At all. It is not, but it felt right. One of my bigger qualms is when people are like, oh, women should always keep all their babies. Well, I want to be a part of that solution. If I'm calling on a woman to keep her baby, I want to be able to help that woman and walk with that woman through whatever she decides. You know what I'm saying? So my husband felt the same way. He was not on board initially. He was like, wait a minute now. But we went to the information session, and in that information session, we learned so much. And I really have a heart for birth mothers now. Like, that decision, and some of the birth mothers are women that I was very jealous of, because they were women who weren't trying to get pregnant and ended up pregnant and then didn't want their babies. And if you had asked me in the midst of my wait, I would have been like, this really sucks. But now I have so much love, and my heart goes out to birth moms who do make that decision for their baby.
Awesome. I was going to ask you, what was your next steps on your journey to motherhood, but adoption is your next step. Yeah. I absolutely love that part of your story. I would love for you to share with us, obviously, this is being recorded for October, which is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And during this month, we really celebrate and highlight our losses. So do you normally throughout the year celebrate your losses in some way, or during October? Share with us, how have you memorialized the babies that are in heaven looking down on us?
So it's interesting because I have not pressed a ton into my losses in a way that we are doing memorials or anything. But one of the things that I have opted to do is always share my story to hold space for other women who need a place to share their story. It took me a while to get to a point where I would talk about our journey on my Facebook page, where I would say, hey, we're going through this. And I cannot tell you how many women have DM'd me or said, hey, can I call you? I want to talk. I think we're miscarrying or we're trying to get pregnant and we're having this issue. What'd you do? What'd you ask your fertility doctor? I've recommended so many people to my fertility doctor here local. So I feel like I'm memorialized in a way by holding space for women. I'm actually in the process of, it's actually interesting, a year need someone to walk with them. This is not an easy feat. You're making arrangements, you're making decisions very, very quickly. And you don't have anyone to walk with through you. So I didn't know really what to call it. I knew I had a doula for my pregnancy, but I did not realize having a doula while for miscarrying or stillborn was a thing. So that was a year ago. So full circle now. I'm now in training to become a doula. So I can start to, in a more formal way, walk with those women who are in that season of their life. So that's how I choose to memorialize my losses, just by sharing my story throughout the year. Whenever anybody would listen, doing things like this, when people say, hey, let's sit down and talk about this, let's highlight that, one, Black women do experience this. There are brighter days on the other side of these stories, and just holding space for the women who do want to talk about it and want to share and want somebody who's been there.
Oh, I love that. That's at my core and my heart.
Yes.
Of what I do, obviously, and to be able to hold space in this way for you to share your story is really a part of my life's work and my work to help create a positive trauma-free birthing experience for Black birthers. So I'm excited and happy that that you are memorializing your babies in that way. I would love to transition and talk about just COVID-19. Obviously, we're recording this a little bit earlier than October, but our world has been shaken in 2020, and we are living in this time of just uncertainty. How has COVID-19 been for you? How have you navigated it through it? Has it brought up, especially with the civil and racial unrest that was happening over the summer, did that bring up any type of feelings regarding your own grief and healing journey?
So COVID-19 has been interesting in our house. So my son was home from daycare for the first 12 weeks. So trying to balance that, like I said, my husband's an entrepreneur, so his schedule is much more flexible than mine because I'm a typical corporate America 9 to 5-ish. We have a lot of West Coast folks, so it even extends beyond 5 some days. Working from home has been, some weeks I love it, some weeks I'm like, okay, I'm not doing a very good job at compartmentalizing life and home. But we have used this time to really grow and press into, so doing Bible study, because typically when I'm working, it's more difficult for me to rush from work to get to a Bible study. So virtual Bible study is great for me. It is very great to just be able to sit down in my PC and log in and be in the comfort of my home and not have to worry about, oh, I didn't get to get home and have dinner with my family. I can still have dinner and even kiss my son goodnight, but still log on for Bible study. So that's been really good for us. In the midst of all this, I've also found a wonderful therapist. I kind of knew coming into this that I wanted to start talking to someone, more so because I was becoming a mom kind of turns everything upside down. I mean, when I started my career, I thought I wanted to be CEO and run the world and be in corporate America. And then all of a sudden it was like, is this really what I want to do? How do I want to go about this? And then when all of the racial injustices and unrest started over the summer, and I started really looking into the disparities of Black birthers, I realized that there is a space for me. And I even remember seeing your page where you're like, oh, are you always the person that your friends come to about birthing questions? Are you this person? Well, you're already a doula. Just get certified. And I'm like, I'm a doula. So I know we're all choosing what lanes we work in when it comes to injustices as it relates to people of color. So that is the lane that I've chosen to be in. That is one positive about working from home because my schedule is a little more flexible. So if I need to take a little bit of time during the day to look at some trainings or research some stuff, I have that flexibility to be able to do that. So COVID-19 has brought about some good things. I'm thankful that I have a mom who is healthy and retired and able to take my son. He spent 2 weeks with her in May and he's with her now, spending another week. So very thankful because, it impacts my husband and I because dating is different now. There are even if we call in a babysitter, it's like, are we going to go sit in the parking lot and eat dinner? So are we tailgating? How is this going to work? So I'm thankful to have family who is willing to take my son and just say, he's fine, go. And then we can have a breather and stay up late or binge TV shows or do research, whatever it is that our hearts want to do. Oh, finish up our adoption stuff, because that's another big thing, because that comes with a whole lot of check boxes. So COVID-19 did slow down our adoption process a bit, mainly because our agency wasn't in the office. And they're still placing children, but everything slowed down pretty dramatically, which is kind of interesting because we thought, we would start back up the process this summer and have a baby by the end of the year. Well, they called us last November and said, hey, we need you to start this back up or we have to close your case. And we said, okay, God, I guess we're starting this back up. So it's kind of funny that it got started back up to eventually slow itself back down enough that hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll still be able to bring home a baby this year.
Awesome. So can you walk us through a little bit of your adoption process? Are you doing private? Are you doing public? Mm-hmm. And where you are, you kind of mentioned a little bit where you are now in the process. Yes. And then if you're okay with disclosing the cost, just so people can get a better understanding of what the differences in cost are as well.
Yeah. So let's see, we're going with an agency called Bethany Services. They are all over the United States. You probably have seen their name before if you've done anything related to adoption. One, they're faith-based, which we liked. That's why one of the reasons why we selected them. I will say I think that they're probably one of the more expensive options. So obviously that's a private adoption. And in the midst of all this, people are like, oh, why don't you adopt through the state? Well, when I called the Georgia Department of Children's Services to get on the list in Georgia for a baby to adopt, I think the list is like a 2 or 3 year wait time just to get on the list. So if you're not in a hurry, that works great. Or if you're thinking about adoption, you may want to get on the list just so you're ahead of the game. But I would encourage anyone to call your state to understand, because there are some things like if you adopt a child through the state, they are typically covered with insurance through the state. There are a lot of different perks, for lack of a better term, if you adopt through a state. We have opted to do a domestic infant adoption. So our baby will likely come from right here in the greater Atlanta, Georgia area. So the process for Bethany is you start out, you go to an information session. From there, you fill out the first application. So there are a lot of paperwork that you're filling out. So you fill out your first application. After that, that's when you go into, it's three weeks of formal education where they are talking about transracial adoption, walking you through what the entire process will look like. We even had a session where they brought in adoptive parents and a birth mother. So we got a chance to hear the story from both sides, not the same family, but it just really opened our eyes. Like the adoptive family shared with us that they do not share their adopted son's story until he gets older. So, because it's his story. And it was something we had never considered. My husband and I are both pretty open about most things. Like, so that would have been something that we would have been willing to share. But now we've started to rethink that and say, well, wait a minute. We want to be very careful about our child's story whenever we bring them into our home, and let them get of age and let us share the story with them and let them choose what they do or don't want to share. They also spend time going over levels of openness. So, I think we all grew up watching Lifetime movies that 16-year-old girls get pregnant, you shuffle them off to another town, they have a baby, some older family adopts the baby, never to hear from the mom again. Well, that's not really the case in 2020. They actually encourage, and there are lots of studies that have been done, that the more open, the better it is for the child. And openness can range from she is an extension of our family, where she is coming over for dinner, or we are having play dates and we are explaining the relationship, all the way down to she could email us. We could set up an email address for her if she just wants to receive pictures. Or she can opt to never want to meet us. And if that is the case, what will happen is every month for the first year, we'll provide a picture of the baby. And then every year after that. So if she ever comes back because she is grieving the loss of her child, she can come back and they will have something to give her. One of the reasons that we did go with Bethany is they do take very good care of the birth mothers. They are very conscious and aware of the decision that she's making and providing the care, the counseling that she needs during her pregnancy and even after her pregnancy. So she comes back 5 years later and says, I'm really struggling with this. They will extend a hand to help her. Which we thought was really good. So once you get through those 3 weeks of your, it's continuing education. Once you get through with those, then sorry about that. So get through the 3 weeks, then you start the home study packet. And the home study packet, I mean, like everything in your life, references, you're pulling out marriage licenses, tax returns. They just want to make sure that you are a fairly stable family. So they say that they're not looking for perfect families, but they want to, they really want to see how you're living. Can you afford to do this? What's your reasoning for doing this? So it's multiple references. There had to be one from our church, one from our job. Like, it's pretty intense. We have to have a total of 30 credit hours of learning. So we listened to podcasts on how to afford adoptions. There are a lot of really good podcasts on there around the grants and how to fundraise money. Also, there's some on discipline. So we've listened to some of those because we have a 2.5-year-old and, we're trying to balance out. We grew up in a culture where we were spanked when we were growing up and trying to understand that doesn't always work for all children. And we've read a couple of different books. So it's a long list of different things that you can do to fulfill those credit hours to complete the home study. Then after you turn in your home study packet is the interview phase. So my husband and I did 2 interviews together and then 1 interview apart, a piece. Then there's a home walkthrough. And at the end of all that, they write up this whole report on your whole life, who you are. Oh, we did have to go to the doctor. We had to have physicals as well as a part of our home study packet. Obviously make sure we're healthy. And then it's a whole report at the end. And then that's when you go on the list to be an expecting family. From there, we did it's kind of like a sheet that says, this is what we're open to. In general, we have said that our preference is a girl who is biracial or African-American. That was our preference. But we kind of left it open on the sheet because we also want God to have his way in this. So we didn't want to say, only show our profile to girl family. So you can say, are you okay with mom having drank or having smoked or done drugs? So you have all of these options. Are you open to multiple births? Are you open to a child with disability? So you go through the service plan is what it's called. You go through, check off all of that. So they kind of know when birth moms come in, they can say, all right, this birth mom would like to see your profile. So we get to see her profile before she gets to see our book. So you do a Shutterfly book that's kind of like a scrapbook of your family. So my husband did that for us. He put a lot of time and added pictures just to tell about us. So once we agree, the mom and or father It just depends. Some situations, the both parents are present. She'll get the book, review it, and decide, yes, she wants to meet us. And then we'll arrange a meeting. And she could decide not to meet us. Let me be clear on that. But our prayer is that she will want to meet us. And if we hit it off and she decides that she wants her baby to come home with us, we'll walk with her through the end of her pregnancy. So typically it's about 6 to 8 weeks left in their pregnancy at this point. So we'll get to walk with her. She'll have the choice of, does she want 24 hours with the baby after the baby's born? Or she may say, yes, my hope is that she will let me be there. That is really what I'm praying. I'm praying that she will really let us love on her and be with her through that very special moment. She has about 4 days after delivery to decide to terminate her parental rights. So that varies by state. Like in Georgia, it used to be 10 days. Now it's 4 days here. And from that is when the whole legal processing starts. So if she has disclosed who the father is, the agency would have already worked with him to terminate his rights. If she has not disclosed, there's a lot of other things that have to go through. You can post in a circular that a baby girl was born at Northside Hospital. If you think you're the father, call this number. So if she doesn't know who the father is, because in some cases she may not know, and it takes about 6 months to a year to get all the legal stuff finalized. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
No, you went through all of it. So no, you went through details, which I would have to go back and link to some other podcast episodes that actually show in more detail as well about the adoption process. But thank you so much. No, you went through great and excellent detail. So where you are now currently is finishing up your homestead, and then they're going to present that book to a birther who may be ready to, say, you are my family.
Yep.
Awesome. So, this is amazing. I'm gonna have to bring you back on the other side of adoption so that you can share that. I think that a lot of us need to really understand that this is a service that can be provided for us, no different than going through ARTs, IUI, IVF. Like, we can become parents other ways. So I'm definitely, once you have that baby in your arms,
I'm gonna call you Erica. I'm ready.
The other thing that I love about this, Stephanie, is that you had the opportunity to doula this baby, this parent, this Black mom, Black birther, who is going to have your baby. How awesome is that?
Listen, I'm like, God, I'm just going to do my part. I'm just going to wait because I just know that it's going to be beautiful. And we prayed. I mean, I want her to want to have a relationship with her. We do want some level of openness, and it will depend on her situation for sure. But we really want to be able to love her and show her the love of God. And I want her to be able to see her child grow up as well.
Awesome. Oh, I love this. Yes, we calling you. Be like, Stephanie, come on. We got to get this podcast going. We want to learn more about adoption and your process. Because obviously, it's always a 2 steps forward, 1 step back in this journey. So I would love to have you to share more about your experience as you move further into the process. So lastly, as we wrap up, I would love for you to share with our listeners, how are you surviving pregnancy loss?
How am I surviving? Okay, so I've gone through stages of survival. So in the time in between becoming a mom and my losses, I really pressed into God. If it was a Bible study, I don't care what it was on, I was pressing in and finding little nuggets and gems. I also had a tribe like no other. My village has prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. Like, everybody jokes that my son, his name is Samuel, obviously biblical. Very, very biblical. We knew for this child, we prayed, and here he is. And it's joked that he is one of the most prayed for children. So honestly, I devoured God's word in that time. And would really listen to him and could very much feel him move. And really, I had to do my part, because I think sometimes don't get me wrong, it's okay to sulk and grieve and be upset because God can handle all of those emotions and all of those feelings. But when he was calling us to action, and there have been a lot of things that he's called us to action on. Oh, I do want to share this one story. So we just bought a house, right? And our realtor wrote our cover letter, and she explained, oh, well, they're getting ready to adopt. They have this child. The lady who owns the house is a birth mother who gave her child up for adoption. And that's why she selected us. So talking about the God things that happen when you are really pressing into him and listening, and even still to this day. So in between that time, that is one of the ways that I really did. So on the other side, now that, I'm a mom, it is still holding space for those women who need an ear, need a shoulder, who just need someone to listen and let them know that they're not alone, because I think it can be isolating, especially for African American women, because it's not something that is talked about, right? None of my cousins, no one had experienced this at the time that I did. So it was very isolating at that time. So really just being in a space where I'm like, hey, this is my story, folks. And if you ever want to talk, call me up. I am going to be non-judgmental, because I get it. I probably felt those same feelings of jealousy and anger and sadness that you feel too. So normalizing it, I think, is really how I choose to memorialize my loss. It's normalize that this is something that happens. It is not our fault that it happens. And making sure women know what their resources are. And find out more if you do want to adopt, if you do want to seek out IUI, IVF, understanding how your body works, because that's another gap. We don't even understand what it means sometimes when I ovulate, when I don't ovulate, and I'm trying to get pregnant, and it seems so simple, but it's really not. So.
Yes. So where can we connect with you after this video and podcast episode?
Yeah. My IG handle is the Steph O. I'm on there. Mostly it's my son. I am now starting to switch and post more things as it relates to Black birthers, getting the word out there, because I think people just don't know about the disparities of Black women, and they think that they had normal experiences, and little did they know, no, you did not have a normal experience. And these are the questions you should be asking. So definitely follow me on IG.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you, Erica.
Part of this Surviving Pregnancy Loss series.
Yes, thank you for creating a space for this, because it's so important.